Little watermelon juice just starts the day perfect. Or is a perfect addition to a good day. I want to talk about the $3,000 Global Nomad Budget. I'm going to break it down real simple. This is my version of a budget video. Everybody says you got to do a budget video. And, you know, if I'm going to be more serious about this YouTube thing, I guess I should. Not Dead Yet is the name of the channel. Came up with the name because I was sitting in my chair waiting to die, and then I realized I didn't want to die, so I needed to get up and do something, and I started traveling the world. I've been at it 3 years, been on the road 3 years. I've learned a lot. I was learning a lot for the few years before I got on the road. I decided I wanted to get on the road about 2019, 2020. I had a plan in place, and we know what happened there. So June 2022, I hit the road. It's June 2025, and I'm back in Albania. I love Albania. I will probably forever always be on my way to Albania at some point in time. It will always be in my future, as long as I'm vertical. But the budget, you got to talk about the budget. You got to talk about the budget. So I'm going to come back to that in 1 second. I'm just going to fill in a couple more little holes here. My YouTube channel for the last 3 years has basically just been a sad attempt at me, chronicling my memories and my journeys, and it's just been a sad attempt. So I may follow through and try a little harder, or I may not. You can stick around and find out, or you can seek life elsewhere. Choice is yours, right? But I go to a lot of interesting places. I have a lot of fun, and I'm going to try to start sharing that in a more coherent manner. So this $3,000 Global Nomad Budget, I came up with this plan because I like things simple and easy. I like things very easy to manage, very easy to follow. It just makes life less stressful. And if you're going to transition to one of the final seasons of your life, why not make it less stressful? Why seek hard? Why seek pain? Why seek frustration? I'm a big fan of do something hard that you don't like every day, and there's a reason for that. If you know, comment below. If you don't know, maybe we'll discuss it, or I'll discuss it one day. Or maybe I'll do it live and you can come on and we'll discuss it. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for me. I do think the future is bright because of this $3,000 Nomad Budget. And it's real simple. Like I said, the $3,000 budget, I break it down in the most simple terms, and that tells me where I can go easily, where I have to be a little more cautious with my travels, and where I want to avoid. So I start with rent. When I sold everything, left America, I had a few other bills that were lingering and will always be there, things like insurance, and I'm not going to cover any specifics. There's no hard numbers here, because hard numbers mean you have to stress and record, and hard numbers are not for me. It's all about soft numbers. It's all about guide rails. It's all about being flexible. And so I think of the $3,000 budget, I think of 1/3 as my rent. So $1,000 a month for rent. So when I look at Airbnbs or things like that, I'm looking for a place that has a washer, a dishwasher, or a kitchen, or this. I'm looking for all these things, right? But it needs to land in that $1,000 a month bucket or category. And that needs to include everything. That needs to include power, water, cable, internet, all that, right? And that keeps me, that's like the starting point, right? If I'm investigating a place to see if I want to go there, that's what I start with. Can I find multiple places that seem good for $1,000 a month, either on Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, whatever it is, right? And in some cases, that's even been hotels. I found hotels that fit into that range, right? They were a little more, so I adjusted my other budgets, right? The next $1,000 is just walk around money, spending money, food money. If I need a new shirt, that comes out of the next $1,000, right? If I need new shoes, that comes out of the $1,000. If I need an SD card or want an SD card, right? Any food, wants, desires, activities, transportation, all of that comes out of the next $1,000. And that, again, is just managed very loosely. And you can use that whole, you know, paperclip method or envelope method, you know, and I'd really recommend that if you're dealing with a new currency, to get used to the currency, right? It really helps you. But overall, you know, I think most coherent adults can just manage their money and, okay, I've got this much for the month to spend, and let me spend it appropriately, right? And then the last $1,000, I save 500 of it. I save half of it, and then I have 500 that goes to things like insurance, long-term savings. So that first 500 is short-term savings, and I'm going to circle back to that because this is a 3-month plan, 3-month cycle, and you can adjust the cycle, and you know, and I'll get into that too. But the final $500, so I put that in, you know, for insurance. If there's a lingering bill or something that comes out of that, and then that goes into long-term savings. So I'm always slowly building the long-term savings. You know, I'm not in the phase of my life where I'm trying to aggressively build my savings. You know, I can do that at a time if I want to take and, you know, adjust to everything else and save some money and put it into long-term savings because I pulled some out for an emergency or something. That's, you know, easy to do, right? Very easy to do. But typically, I'm not in that phase of my life where I'm trying to, you know, build a nest egg. I'm at the phase of the life where I don't want the nest egg to shrink, but I also, you know, want to be ready for whatever is in my future, as ready as you can be reasonably. So then that other 500, that short-term savings, on the 3-month cycle that I initially envisioned, it was for side trips. So I came up with this idea, bucket on a bucket list. You can go search that phrase on my channel and you'll come up with a video that explains it. But essentially what I wanted is a 3-month cycle, because if you go to Europe, you have to, on a tourist visa, they have a 90-day tourist visa cycle, 90 days in, 90 days out. So you can be there for 90 days, and then you have to be out, and then you can come back for 90 days. But it's rolling. So if you're there for 60, you leave for 30, you can come back and do another 60, and then leave for 30, and then come back and do another 30, right? So if you don't understand what a rolling 90-day visa is, dig into that a little more. But that 90-day cycle worked out great for me, because if I save 500 the first month, I save 500 the second month, I go on a side trip to somewhere fabulous, right? Because usually I'll be leaving someplace cheap, so I have a big excursion. I have $1,000 set aside just for that excursion, a weekend or a week somewhere, you know, amazing. And then the final month, the third month, I'm saving that 500 for my next move. So my next move to wherever I'm going, typically I can get that done for 500. And if I can't, then I can adjust everything else and make that move happen. Now, if you're going to do a faster roll, you're probably going to drop that side trip money, and every month or 2 months you're going to be moving. So every 2 months, if you're on the 500 short-term savings, you know, now you've got 750 every 2 months to move, right? Or it's actually 1,000 every 2 months, but yeah, it's 1,000 every 2 months. I was thinking 750 for something else, but you should be able to easily move for 750, and a lot of that has to do with how much you're packing, how much you're carrying, right? And when I left America, I had a huge belly and a huge bag, and then a big box, and then another bag, and then another box, and it was just crazy. And it worked out great for the 3 months, because I had a lot of things that I liked, a lot of things I used. You know, I carried some of my own pans and cutlery, because not all Airbnbs are the same. And it just made my life more comfortable. I had more than 1 or 2 pairs of pants, right? I had more than a couple shirts, had a couple pairs of shoes, right? And it was just a more normal lifestyle. Now I'm with 1 bag and a backpack, and you know, now I'm up to 2 pairs of pants, but you know, for a long time I had 1 pair of pants, you know, 1 pair of shoes, you know, limited number of shirts, things like that. So it's a more freeing lifestyle, but it's also with less, right? And less is obviously usually more. Sorry for the break there, but it was necessary. It's getting a little warm out. So $3,000, again, super general. But if you think about it in terms of how much a day, right? So 1,000 over 30 days, that's $30 a day. Oh, I didn't even notice the big boat's leaving or left. I don't know if you can see it, but okay. So I was saying the $1,000 over 30 days, that's $33 a day, right? So when you're looking at Airbnbs, you want that monthly rate to be under that 1,000, and that is kind of limiting. But if you have more money, spend it, right? I'm not telling you not to. This is just what I do, and I thought I'd share it with people so they understand, how I'm living my life, because I get a lot of questions that say, how do you afford that, right? And I afford it because I don't have a car, I don't have this, I don't have that, right? I don't do this, I don't do that. The most flexible part of my budget is my food budget, right? So if you look at it, $33 a day is quite a bit of food. And then you've got to take out things like if I want a new pair of sunglasses, right? That's this much money. If I want a new shirt, it's this much money, right? Or if I need to take a taxi, that comes out of that 33 a day, right? So the 33 a day is kind of a goalpost, or a guide rail, I should say. It's kind of a guide rail to understand that if I spend more today, I need to spend less tomorrow. If I spend more this week, I need to spend less next week. And the end of the month always comes around, so you always know, if you're hitting your number or not by what happens at the end of the month. And it just keeps everything simple, right? So when you're finding the Airbnb, $33 a day isn't always the easiest number to hit. But on the monthlies, a lot of times you can find it. And again, that goes back to choosing where to live, where to stay, where to go. Because if I'm staying here in Albania, this place right now is, at the top end of that, right? It's probably a little more. But in 6 months, this place will be half of that, right? And I could probably get it for less. There's many places in Albania I can get that rent number way down. And then you talk about food, spending $30 a day on food here, I'll be gaining 5 kilos a week, a minimum. And so I can, breakfast, my typical breakfast when I go to the restaurant, I get a couple eggs, I get some tomatoes, I get some cheese, and I get some cucumber, an espresso, and a big water. So the big water is €3, $3. The espresso is $1, so I'm at 4. The breakfast is 5, so I'm at 9 right there. So you figure $10 for breakfast, and I am full, happy, done for most of the day. There are many days where I've eaten breakfast like that. I try to eat around 9 or 10, do the whole intermittent fasting. And there's been many days where come 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get hungry, but it's really too late to eat. So yeah, I'll just skip it, right? Maybe I'll go get a single or 1 or 2 small pieces of dark chocolate or something, or maybe some nuts or something salty, maybe a piece of fruit. But more often than not, once I got into the intermittent fasting, I end up just skipping meals all the time. And so that $30 a day, it goes a lot farther than you would imagine. And then if you start cooking for yourself and stop eating out, right, it's really, once you get out of America and out of places like London, spending $30 a day on food or expenses, it's kind of a chore. Like, my typical day is I don't have a leaky budget in my daily habits, right? I don't leak a lot of things out of my budget, so it's really easy to stick to. And a lot of times I'll in my mind or in my thought process, I'll focus more on the $20 a day and let that 10 just ride. And then I can spend that 10 on excursions, I can spend that 10 on rent or whatever. I can buy, a new SD card or something, right? But if I focus on spending 10 on food, I'm usually happy and full. I mean, shoot, I gained a ton of weight the last year. So the first year I went from 155 kilos to 120 kilos in the first 18 months. And then I went back to, 120 kilos. And then I went back to 135 kilos. And now I'm on my way back down. just because I'm back in Albania, I'm walking stairs, I'm enjoying the heat, right? And I'm got my eating back under control. I got my sleeping back under control, and I'm not bouncing around so much. When I bounce around a lot, you spend more money on food, you eat more junk, and you put on a few kilos, right? But it's life. I'm not going to stress about a few kilos. I will pay attention. I will adjust my lifestyle. I will react, but I'm not going to stress out about it. I will adjust my life. I will not live a horrible existence and eat carrots all day, right? And I'm fortunate in that I found a system where when I abide by the system, I save money and I lose weight, and I'm happy, satiated, and content. And at the end of the day, that's what this $3,000 budget is all about. It's about being happy, satiated, content. Pick your adjective, right? It's all about living a better, more stress-free lifestyle. And if you don't enjoy beaches, there's plenty of places with the mountains. There's plenty of places around the world. But if you start looking at flights the way I do, you start looking at housing the way I do, it should be easy for you to see that a $3,000 budget opens the door to you being a global nomad very, very easily without a lot of stress. You've got to pay attention to your health. You've got to pay attention to everything, right? But it doesn't mean you have to sit in your chair in America, heating up Hot Pockets or corn dogs in the microwave, eating pasta, from the grocery store. It's just, once I got off that American food, I just felt better. Once I started relaxing and not stressing about everything around me, once I realized I can walk down the street with a cell phone in my hand and not worry about it, I don't have to look over my shoulder every 30 seconds. All I have to do, and honestly, this is an issue, you have to watch where you walk because there's a few more landmines from dogs and there's a few more trip hazards because the rest of the world isn't full of lawyers trying to sue everybody into poverty. So I would say, if you want to go nomad, if you want to go expat, what are you doing now? If you're in the process of retirement, securing that budget, that's great. There's a lot you can do to maximize that. Change your eating habits now, change your behaviors now, change your attitude now, right? And this has all been like a hyper extreme, I don't know how to say it. It's all been like a super speed of changing my life. I was slowly changing my life the 5 years before I hit the road. But once I mastered this $3,000 budget, my life is just changing exponentially all the time. It's just getting better and better and better. And it's hard to communicate that through a video or a series of videos, but try it yourself. Try it yourself. Pick up a book, pick up a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a cup of water, sit down, relax, read it, go for a swim, go for a hike, go for a walk, sit down and meet some strangers, talk about the weather on Mars. Life is good. But it's only good if you want it to be good. It's only good if you work for it. And it's only good if you try hard to not be that angry expat. On that, I'm going to say go check out The Ugly Tourist. His video on angry expats is phenomenal. And if you don't laugh at that, don't bother coming back here because I'm not going to make you laugh. I'm not a good humor guy. I've got a low charisma. I've got a low EQ. What I do have is I'm pretty tenacious and I like to get out and do fun things. I like to go places. I like to experience things. And I'm going to try and do a better job of sharing that with people here. So if you like it, come back. If not, thank you for staying this long. Have a great day.